Alright, in this video, we're going to take a look at equivalent ratios. So we know that a ratio is something that compares two quantities together. Now we're going to look at how you make equivalent ratios for those two quantities that you're describing or comparing. So make sure you put today's date in the upper corner of your notes. Alright, so first thing, let's remember that the word equivalent means the same or equal. So if two things are equivalent, they're the same or they are equal to each other. So in order to find equivalent ratios, you either have to multiply or divide both parts of the ratio by the same number. So let's take a look at an example. Let's say I gave you the ratio 10 to 20. If I wanted to find an equivalent ratio by multiplying, I would take my original ratio and I would multiply each side or each value by the same number. So an equivalent ratio for this, if I multiplied both by 2, would be 20 to 40. I could also find an equivalent ratio by dividing both sides by the same number. So let's say I divided both sides by 5, both pieces of the ratio. An equivalent ratio there would be 2 to 4. So all three of these ratios, 20 to 40, 2 to 4, 10 to 20, these are all equivalent ratios. They all represent the same value. And we found them by either multiplying by the same number to each value or dividing the same number from each value. And remember, when you're dealing with ratios, the order matters. So you can't switch the numbers. It's really important that you stay in the same order. So what we're going to work on is finding equivalent ratios. And really all you're doing is using your multiplication and division skills to find equivalent ratios. So let's say I gave you the ratio 72 to 64. And I want to know, how can I make it equivalent to 9 and some number? So how do I figure out what that number is? What's the equivalent ratio from 72 to 64 to 9 and something else? So we're going to look at, how do I turn 72 into 9? 72, well, we're going smaller, so we're going smaller we're dividing. So 72 divided by something gives me 9. So going through my multiplication facts, or you can use your calculator and just do 72 divided by 9, it'll tell you your number. But what we're doing here is we're dividing it by 8. 72 divided by 8 is 9. So whatever I do from the first number, I have to do from the second number. So that means I also have to divide 64 by 8. So 64 divided by 8 is 8. So that means that my equivalent value here has to be an 8. So 72 to 64 is equivalent to 9 to 8. So when you're trying to find equivalent ratios, remember you're just looking at dividing or multiplying the same number on both sides to get to the equivalent number. Let's try some practice problems.